I'm Lee. I'm on Ravelry as louleigh and Instagram as Instamatic louleigh, and this is my podcast about knitting and making things and my creative life that way, I suppose. I'm a New Zealander and I live in the East Riding of Yorkshire, and quite unusual for me. I am back after, only a week, maybe a bit more. Yes, I usually have a much longer hiatus between podcasts. It's really good to be back to and talking to you. I have a large stack of jeans that one of my neighbours has brought around to shorten, and so I'm talking to you as opposed to, because I'm trying to avoid doing that. You're not just an excuse. I quite like chatting to you, and I've got a few things to tell you about this week. I have finished a couple of things off. We have a Ravelry group called louleigh, and it's marvellous to have you all over there and chatting. I think in the last week we've been talking about yarns that are local to us, which is really interesting. I think one of the interesting things was that when people talk about yarns that are local to them, I always think wool, which is not always the case. Some people might live near a silk producer or cashmere or angora or cotton. I suppose there's people that live near flax and linen production areas. So yeah, that broadened my horizons a bit when it came to thinking about local yarns. That was really interesting. But if you do feel like popping over and saying hello, it's always nice to put a personality to a view number. It just says that this number of people have looked at your video. You're sort of like, well, who are they? So it's always nice to interact with you in a more meaningful way. Yes, and I'm really looking forward to having a bit of a chat with you. I think this is going to be short, but I have a massive heap of stuff over here. So yes, today I'm wearing a cardigan which has been on the podcast before. This was a custom fit cardie that I made last summer, and it is made from the Blacker Breeds Falkland Island wool, and I've forgotten the actual design name. Custom fit is a tool that Amy Herzog put together, where you put in all your measurements and it spits out a pattern that fits you. Yeah, that fits you. That is tailor-made to your measurements, to your dimensions. And this is the second custom fit garment that I've made, and I wear them a lot because they always look smart and nice. So that's what I have on today. I also have on my Ravelry t-shirt. So there we go. I'm very knitting themed today. You can hear Barney snoring. Poor old fellow. I'm not going to bother him. You just have to put up with that with me. You would have seen from Finishing Glory that I have finally finished my croft hoose hat that I talked about a couple of episodes ago, and it is a free pattern by Ella Gordon, and it's made from Jameson of Shetland Spindrift. And I finished the knitting on this quite some time ago. Well, that's just cracking me up. It's like a motor. I'm sorry if my snoring dog bothers you, but he's an old fellow and we've been outside all morning, and so he's a bit tired. I don't want to shift him, so you're just going to have to put up with that engine noise down, just down here. Anyway, so I finished the knitting on my Croft Hoose hat ages ago, and I have been weaving in the ends piecemeal. This is the section where I've woven in my ends, and usually when I weave in ends I actually follow the stitches on the back so that the ends kind of disappear. But because there were so many ends, it looked like a little mohawk down here. There were so many ends all over the place, and so many floats and things obstructing my weaving, I just jammed them in anywhere. I have also committed a knitting crime. I have tied knots, and as far as I understand it, the reason you don't usually tie knots is because they can end up on the front side. You know, they'll sort of walk their way through to the front. But there were so many ends down here, and sort of little bits where the yarn had started and there was a loose gap. And so I just made a little knot to pull and I would pull the stitches together and close up that gap, and then check on the front that it looked right, and then I would tie it off in a granny knot. Yeah, so I have tied a few knots down there, and I don't think on the front, in the hooses section, I don't think you can really see very well where my seam is, but I'm not going to point it out, but if you can spot sort of like the seam edge there, I can see it. Yeah, there's definitely a discrepancy. I could have snugged up those stitches a little bit more. I think the only thing I would do differently if I was going to knit it again in terms of managing all those ends is, yeah, I would do some end management, some colour management, so that I didn't end up with this great big furry seam section, especially in the ribbing section around the edge, where you only use the colour for one row and then you change to another colour. And I just broke them off. I didn't carefully braid them up or anything. I just broke them off and put the next colour in. And the same with the top section. You're pretty much using the colour for a row and then breaking and then changing the colour. And so I would recommend sort of like weaving them up there as well, because they do come back again. And you know, there's not big gaps in between the colour changes, because actually most of the colours in this hoose section are used for at least 2 rows each, so the ends aren't as prolific there. I did make another change to the pattern. I was worried about a jog in the middle of this house here, and so when I was knitting, I wish I had the pattern here to show you where that is though, and so I changed the beginning of my row. So when you start with your row just in this gap in the first section, and then your row is right in the middle of your house as you move up. And so I just changed the start of my row. When I was on this first light blue colour, I moved the stitches around. So I did that light blue row, and then I moved the stitches around to change the beginning of my row, so I didn't know if I was going to get a jog, but I wanted to avoid it. I didn't want to see a jog right in the middle of my houses. Houses, my dwellings. Yeah, so that was the only other change that I made to that, and I'm really pleased with it. So I have grand plans to make a cowl and gloves and all sorts of things to match this. Maybe a whole hoose jumper, because I see that pattern. I'm not sure if it's out or it's coming out, but that would be really exciting. Whether or not that will happen soon is a whole other thing, because I've got that many things on the go, it's not funny. But anyway, that is the Croft Hoose hat by Ella Gordon. This next section is the bit where I tell you I'm going to do something in order to make myself accountable for doing it. So this year is the first year that I am going to participate in Stash Dash, and Stash Dash is an online event run by the Knit Girls, and I think it began as a way of sort of a motivation to finish off all of those languishing whips, and you count up all of the meterage that you've used, and it counts towards different sort of distance goals. So it starts off at about 3 kilometers and then 5 kilometers and works all the way up to 15. And some people like to really compete with themselves and see how much meterage they can get done within the time period. I think it goes from today through till late August. I don't know what the exact date is. But I have about 13 whips in various different crafts floating around my house, and that's too many for me. Some of my projects have become way more epic than they were ever supposed to have been, and some things I just want to get finished off so that I can focus on new things. Really, it's difficult to get excited about new things when there's still a load of old things floating around, and it's not that those old things are less exciting. Anyway, I'm waffling now. So I thought I would participate in Stash Dash this year, and so I have broken it up. I've done a little plan, and I've worked out 3 knitting projects that I want to start, and well, not start, but get off the needles that I'm going to hit first. And then I have a little reward for myself, something that I can start for having completed those 3 projects. These are all things that you've seen before. The first one is in my louleigh bag, and it is the Succulent Shawl by Maria Monska. Let me take this bit off. I don't think oh no, I'm part way through a row. Look, I can't even spread this out. It just looks like a lump of knitting. There you go, the Succulent Shawl by Maria Monska. Her sample looks way better than that. And the reason this has been languishing is because I have made a mistake somewhere, and I want to unpick it and go back and get it right. I did try to just fudge it, and that made it more wrong. And so, yes, that needs to go a little bit backwards before it goes forwards again. But I think there are 5 or 6 repeats. I'm not sure if I have enough yarn to do all the repeats, but I've done 4 of them. So I know it gets bigger. It's a triangular shawl, so it gets bigger as you go along, but I feel like I've definitely broken the back of it, and I'm not that far off the edge. So yeah. So yes, I need to go back on that before I go forwards. Have I got the picture here? Yes, this is the pattern. So that will be one of the things that I'm working on as my Stash Dash project. The next one is one of the projects that has turned into, well, what actually started out as quite a simple, easy to knit jumper and has become totally epic. And I have it in this bag that I was given in a swap by Lara from the Fawn and the Fox, and I love the colours of this bag. I think it's beautiful, and it's got a squishy batting, sort of like a quilted interfacing in it. I've never had a bag like that before. You people that collect bags will be going, well, quite a few of them have that nice squishy inner, and I have a whole jumper in here, so the whole thing feels like a comfort pillow. And I really like it. I've sort of been carting it around like my teddy bear. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's a lovely bag and it's a lovely colour. And so inside I have my enchanted Misa, and I had finished the torso of this and put it on, and you could see my roly tummy. It was just a bit tight, and I couldn't lift my arms up. There were things going wrong. It was too small. So I came to the conclusion that actually I couldn't really amend it. It was the only real solution was to start from scratch. I had thought about just finishing it and gifting it to somebody, but I really liked the yarn, which is a selection of blacker yarns that I'm using. This is all scrunchy as well, but this is how far I am at the moment. I have put this on. I try to avoid putting it on every time I knit it, which is tempting, and I'm much happier with the fit of it. But at the moment I am up to this stripy section here, which is just endless stocking stitch, and the first time I knitted this endless stocking stitch it didn't feel like such a marathon, but now I've done it, now I'm doing it for a second time, I kind of am begrudging all that stocking stitch a little bit, and I'm looking forward to getting back to the garter stitch at the bottom, the fun bit. But I still have a fair way to go, so I kind of plug away at that until I feel like I want to knit something else. So I'm just, oh, yarn down, yeah, just chipping away at that one. I think there should be at least 1,000 metres in there. I'm not a small person, my jumpers usually involve quite a bit of yardage. So that is Enchanted Mesa by Stephen West. Do I have that? No, I don't think I have the pattern in there to show you the picture. But anyway, I am making it I was inspired for the colours for this by my dog, the one you can hear snoring down here, Barney. Yeah, so I decided to make a jumper the same colour as my pooch. So the third knitting project that that I've been focusing on is a pair of Cookie A socks. I think I showed you this last time, so I'm not going to dwell on it. These are the Girl on Fire socks by Cookie A. I have them in my really cute little bobbins bag, and I'm making them out of a sock blank that I dyed myself, and yeah, they're the Girl on Fire socks. I'm really quite chuffed with the way they're coming out, and I'm up to the foot of the first one. Dead fun, really easy to follow the lace pattern. You can't see it very well with this yarn. Maybe you can see it a bit better there. I'm hoping it'll pop out a bit more once it's blocked, but otherwise I'm really pleased with the way it's coming out. Enjoying that pattern a lot. So yeah, so once I have finished those three projects, I have decided that I am going to have a reward project, and I have, it's way over there, stand by. Once I have finished those three knitting projects, I'm going to start my reward project, which is the Neon Cardie by Hohe Locatelli. I really like the sort of tailored shape of this and the sort of the mesh style of the knitting. I think they just look like yarn overs. As a nice sort of summer transitional cardie. I'm not knitting it in a neon colour. I've decided to use new Lanic yarn, and I decided to do this one because you will have seen, if you've watched before, that I have a new Lanic jersey that I wear all the time. And it's such a hard wearing yarn, and it doesn't pill. It always looks nice. And so it's not the softest yarn, but it just always looks really smart, so I thought I would knit it in that, and I think that colour's going to look really good on me, don't you think? yeah, so that's all. That's not quite ready to go. I don't have, this is one of my bags that I've made. I just don't have my knitting sticks in there. So mind you, I've got to swatch anyway. I might not use the knitting sticks that the pattern says, so not really much point in putting them in yet. But I mean, clearly I should really put this in a bigger bag for portability, but for now that can just stay in there where I can see what I have to aspire to once I've finished those other projects. So yes, those are my knitting goals for Stash Dash. I also have a number of languishing spinning projects that have just been sitting around as well. And so I have herded together 3 of those that I'm going to work on, and then I'm going to have a spinning reward as well. So actually they're all spread out all over the place. I'm going to just cluster them together a bit. I have a few projects here that have been languishing for a really long time. When I say really long, we're talking over a year. And so I'm hoping to get some of those cleared off my bobbins, because I also have, these aren't the only 3 spinning projects I have languishing, and I feel like if I get these ones off my bobbins it will make way for other things. So this is the first one. There's not much there, it's just a little sample of Southdown, which is a breed of sheep, and I just need to split that off into 2 separate bobbins and ply it up, and it will be finished. And I actually want to do some little tests with this because it's a Downs breed yarn, and I wanted to see what happens when I put it through the washing machine, because as we talked about last time, Downs breeds are not supposed to felt easily, so I'm really interested to see what happens there. That's what that little sample is all about. The other thing that I have on the, all the things that I have on the go. So these have been on my bobbins for ages. And this is a blue face Leicester gradient, just of natural colours. And I suppose these have been sitting around because I thought I was going to do fancy things with them and sort of blend the colours together to make an ombre effect and all sorts of other palavery things. And I think actually I just need to split them up and to, you know, apply them into their own separate individual colours, and then I would have some nice yarn to maybe do a colour work pattern or something like that. I think there's about 150 grams here, so there's actually a decent amount to have some fun with. So that's the number 2 spinning project I have on the go. And then the last one is a project that I started when I had my big factory cleanup a couple of months ago. I found some really exciting fibre and just thought, ooh, I'll do that now. And it was this lovely Corriedale that I got from Easy Knits. I have 2 of these, so I've got 200 grams, and I've decided to do a fractal spin. I've already started it and I have that on the go, and I'll talk a little bit more about what a fractal spinning is next time I show this, so you can see what I mean. But I love the colours in this. It's going to be a beautiful yarn, and I'm really looking forward to being able to knit with that. So yes, those are my 3 spinning projects that I want to get done, and I have a little reward for when I finish those as well, because why not? I think finishing 3 and starting 1 is kind of okay. Eventually you're kind of going to get your whip list down to a reasonable amount. So I was lingering over on Instagram, as you do, and I saw that Fondant Fibre had just put out some new, I don't know if they're terribly new blends, but anyway, she was advertising her blends over there. And I've been wanting to spin for another pair of hand spun socks, because those are my favourite socks, at the moment, and I didn't really want to spin merino. I wanted to do something different, but this blend really caught my eye because it has in it Shetland, merino and bamboo. And I have a couple of pairs of bamboo socks that I really like because they wick the moisture away from your feet. And so I'm really intrigued. This looks very soft and it's very fluffy. I'm intrigued as to what this will be like as a sock yarn. I think these socks are going to be quite luxe actually, and I'm quite looking forward to them. So yes, that will be my reward spin. I think that's all that I have planned for Stash Dash. If I have time, I've got other stuff that I can do, but I just thought I'd set up that little system to kind of encourage myself to crack on. So you would have noticed in finishing Glory that I have also finished making this dress. I'm not going to get it all in there. There's more to it than there's more down here, you know, down there. Of course. Yeah. And this dress has been in the making for quite some time. When I say quite some time, I think I mean about 4 years, maybe. I started off, the pattern is Peony by Colette Patterns, and I started off by making the toile for this about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And I just made it out of an old duvet cover. This is it here. Look, I even tried to match these stripy bits up on the sleeve. And the darts and whatnot were in the wrong place, but the thing that I really struggled with was at the back of the sleeve, just here, I always get kind of like a little pucker. It kind of wrinkles there, and some of my simpler shirts do that as well. But the problem was here that the top of the sleeve cap was also very tight over the top of my arm, and whenever I lifted my arms up, the whole dress kind of like whisked up around my neck. And so I had thought that that was kind of like a sleeve shaping problem, and because it's a set-in sleeve, I really didn't want to, I didn't have the guts to mess with it. So it kind of got shoved under the bed until I decided to bring it out and take it along to sewing school. I go to a sewing workshop every Thursday because at home here I always feel like I should be making bags for my Etsy shop, and so I never do any fun sewing for, you know, just for myself. So I go to the sewing workshop, and apart from that they help you work out your problems. So I think I've cleared out all of the things that ended up thrown under the bed. One by one we have resolved all the issues, and this was kind of like the last thing. Yeah, and so we made a couple of other sort of bodices and tried different things. I think this was the second one that we made, that was the back, and tried making the sleeve cap bigger. Look, you can see my notes written on there. These are just old sheets and things. They were pretty threadbare, you know, so we tried making these alterations, and I shifted the bust darts as well because they were in the wrong place, but moving them about wasn't that big of a deal, and nothing was really working. And I think I was either reading the pattern, or, which I highly recommend. I don't often do it, but yes, highly recommend it. Or I was over on their website where it said that all of their patterns were made for a B cup, and suddenly the penny dropped. I'm not a B cup, I'm more like a D cup. And so what I actually needed to do was to make a large bust adjustment. I was actually, across the back, I was getting those little wrinkles because the back was actually too wide and the front wasn't wide enough. And so I made a final muslin, which I left way over here. I have picked it apart because I traced it off to make new pattern pieces. But yeah, so I made the final muslin. Doesn't look like terribly much. Look, I've unpicked the darts as well. And made a large bust adjustment. There are two adjustments you can make if you've got big boobs. One creates more fabric vertically and one creates more fabric horizontally, and we worked out really that I just only needed to do the one that gave it a bit more width. And after that I didn't need to fiddle about with the sleeves. That resolved the whole sleeve issue. It was just that I guess when you take your bust measurement, you get the whole circumference of your body, and it doesn't necessarily tell you where the bits are. You might be a B cup and have a wide back, or you might have a narrow back and have bigger boobs, which is how I work. So anyway, that worked really well, and I've ended up, the dress actually fits quite nicely. Well, I don't get the wrinkles at the back of the sleeves. It's resolved a fit issue for me. Yeah, so I'm really pleased about the fit of this dress, but I'm not so pleased about some of the little finishing things that I've done or not done. I think I would do, I get finicky over finishing. I like to do a lot of hand sewing so you don't get top stitching on the outside and all that sort of stuff, because I feel like the things that I take a lot of time to get right and to finish really to a really high standard get a lot more outings, and they get worn a lot more. So I don't mind spending some time over hand sewing hems and all that sort of stuff, and I aim to finish my things as well as my ready-made garments, or better. I aim for better, but it doesn't always, I don't think this is finished quite as well as some of my ready-made garments, which is a bit disappointing. So for example, on the inside here by the zip, you can see where I've made a complete mess of the overlocking and had to re-overlock it. I missed it completely. Who was driving that day? What a nightmare. And the other thing that I think, like you can see here, I wish that I had overlocked the pockets before I installed them, because I couldn't get right in there with my overlocker and finish that off neatly across here. Which I'm a little bit bummed about. The pockets sort of flap back and forth as well. I feel like I'm always having to push them forward, and so, you know, if I made it again, I'd have a little bit of a thought around that. And I've got a hook and eye closure here. Can you even see that? Here, that I've just stitched on the outside. And I kind of wish that I had stitched that into there rather than just putting it on top. So there's a few things that I'm not incredibly happy with. I like to do, one of the things I went back to, I like to use non-fusible facings, and I always cut the seam allowance off and then hand stitch them in. I just feel like they give a better finish. You don't end up with a bulky seam where you've got facing and your seam allowance. And I like to tack down the facings so they don't flip out or anything. Yeah, so I like all those little details, and sort of like hand hemming my my sleeve hems and that sort of stuff. I mean, I don't mind top stitching if it's a feature, but if it doesn't need to be seen, I just feel like it clutters up the garment. But I think this is something that I think I'm going to get a lot of wear out of this one, so I'm quite pleased that I've done it and it's finished now. And actually I have the cardigan that I'm going to knit. I wanted so that I would have, none of my cardigans really go with this dress, and so in the spirit of the Tiny Paper Foxes podcast, I thought I would knit myself a cardigan to match, and I think that's going to look really nice. I also have more of this fabric left over, and so I've decided to make a little pair of, well, not too little, a pair of shorts. You don't want them to be too little. Not on me. Yes, so I've decided to make a pair of shorts because I want to try, and I've always struggled with trousers. I struggle with ready-made trousers and that sort of thing. I can't be that oddly a shape. There must be other people shaped a little bit like me. Yeah, so I'm hoping that I can jiggle around the fit of those and learn something about how I might alter trousers so that they fit me better. And I like the idea of having a couple of basic matching garments and the cardi to go together. So yeah, I have aspirations to make a couple of t-shirts that will match with both of those, and I'll have a bit of a summer wardrobe going on. So those are my sewing adventures. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about was a question that was actually asked over in the forum, and it was asked by Meg in the Third, and she wanted to know what sort of yarn I would use if I was going to make non-superwash merino gardening gloves, and she was talking about things being too good to wear in the garden, and I totally get that. I made a pair of specialist gardening gloves. They are all pilly. You can tell they've been in the garden. You've seen these before, and these are made out of a, look, I should have debobbled these. This is just how it is. These are made out of a Knitting Goddess yarn that is actually superwash merino and nylon, and they are flip tops. I'm kind of thinking I need a button back here because those do actually fall forward when I'm in the garden. I treat these a bit like socks. I get them dirty and then I put them in the washing machine. But Megan the Third had asked me what yarns I might use for a pair of gardening mitts if I wasn't going to use a superwash merino. Did I say that this was, that did I say the pattern that I used for this? It was Knotty by Julia Mueller, and I just altered it and added a sock toe to turn it into a convertible glove. So Megan the Third had asked me what yarn I would use to make a pair of these if I wasn't going to use a merino nylon blend. And so I went into my stash and had a bit of a poke around, and the first thing I came up with was this. This is a Knitting Goddess yarn, and it's Brit Sock, and it's 40% Blue Face Leicester, 20% Wensleydale, 20% alpaca and 20% nylon. And I mean, this was designed to be knitted into socks. I have seen a pair of socks that were knitted up in this, and they were a little bit pilly, so I do wonder if this would be a little bit, I think it would be strong enough, but it might be a little bit too fluffy for gardening mittens. So the next thing I came up with was actually the yarn that I made my cardigan with, and this is a blacker Falkland Island wool. It's soft-ish. It hasn't pilled. Well, it's pilled a little bit at the armpits. I've never debobbled it. And here, look, there's my armpit. So you can see it's not hugely pilly, it's not hugely fluffy, and I think that would wash and wear quite well as a gardening mitten. The other thing I found, which I thought would be quite interesting, because this should be quite a strong yarn. I don't recommend knitting gardening mitts in this colour in particular, but this is Rowan Fine Art, and it has in it wool, mohair, polyamide and silk, so it should be really strong and hard wearing, I would have thought. It's not super fluffy. I've seen this knitted up and it's still not really, it doesn't have much of a halo at all, and so I think that would be a fantastic yarn for gardening mitts. I think they would wear really well. The last one I thought would make good gardening mitts is one that you can't actually get hold of. This is some yarn that I found in my local charity shop, and it just says that it is wool nylon, double strength. It says, does it even say nylon? No, it says all pure wool, double strength. It looks like a really hard wearing yarn. This is the label, and I think this would make fantastic gardening mittens to keep your hand warm in winter while you are poking around in the soil. Feels really, yeah, really rustic and hard wearing. Obviously you guys can't get random things that I've found in my charity shop, so I think if I was going to go out and buy something specifically for making gardening mittens, I would probably go for the Rowan Fine Art. As I say, not in this colour, but I think that would make a really long lasting, hard wearing pair of mittens, because like I say, my the ones that I've made I wash a lot, and so you would need something that would stand up to that sort of washing and wearing a lot. So yes, thank you for your question, Megan the Third, and I hope that was helpful. So that is all from me today. I look forward to chatting with you on Instagram or over in the Ravelry groups. It's always nice to see you in both of those places, and seeing what you're working on yourself. If you do know, if you can suggest any other yarns that might be useful for a pair of hard wearing, likely to get dirty mittens, that would be really interesting. I'd love to hear other people's take on that one. And I shall talk to you again soon. Cheerio!